Hey, I think I'm live. It's been a while since I've made a video, so just spilling my water all over myself here. Just thought I'd go live and give some reactions to some of the comments that I've received lately on my Atheist experience video that I did a while ago, back in 2017. I'm going to put a link here in the live chat for anyone that shows up there, because I've never tried this before, but I thought we would do an improvised session if anyone feels like joining. Not expecting a lot of people to watch this on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, but I just put the link there just in case. And this video that you're seeing of me right now is actually a screen grab of my other monitor over here, which is a Google Meet that matches the credentials of that. If you want to join in and just chit chat on this Sunday afternoon, seems like it would be a fun way to pass the time. So I'm going to hop over and take a look at my video. Sorry, multitasking is not my thing. So if I go over and take a look at this video here, I'll pop in there myself, and I'll go over and start navigating and take a look at the comments. This, as you can see, this is a call that I made. Caller David in Montreal. Back on, what date was it? June 3rd, 2017. It's not a super popular, it's not their most popular video they've ever done with this Atheist Experience call-in show, but 167,000 views, pretty good. It's up there with, you know, it's in the top 20 or 30 anyway, of all time. And you can see here I have a little comments plugin, YouTube comment search. It's showing that I have 23,019 comments. I'm not sure why that differs from YouTube's official number of 2339, but no big deal. I find YouTube comments, the comments section, annoying for many reasons, not only because of the stupid comments that people leave for the most part, but also because of the way you have to scroll and expand, read more, and I understand there's a lot of data they have to manage, so I understand why they do it that way, but it's that lazy load thing. You have to scroll to the bottom of the screen, then it loads in, and you have to expand every thread to see what's going on in the conversation. I just find it time consuming, and I don't always get a notification by email when someone comments or responds to my response to their comment. So it's far from perfect, but it is what it is. I just, I get email notifications and then I respond to the silly comment, and then I take a little cruise around. I take a look around to see what's going on. So let's maybe sort this by top comments, which it already is. The first comment here is just me doing a little statistical analysis last week. 362 unique YouTube users who have commented. Here's the long list. It's since gone up a little bit, but the idea is to hand out awards, and I say sarcastically here, internet points, with lots of girly exclamation points, because I think it's so silly that people, these keyboard warriors, think they're winning internet points. And I'll have several categories: best comment, most comments. So some of these people give a lot of comments, so they'll win some internet points for that. Most characters used in comments. Some people are verbose. They may not comment as frequently, but they're verbose. I got to give an award for that. Funniest comments. I've had a couple. I mean, by funniest, I mean where you're trying to be funny and you are funny. I'm not talking about someone who is so incredibly dim-witted that it makes me laugh out loud, because that's pretty much every comment that I get is so stupid that it makes me laugh out loud. That's not what I mean by funny. What I mean by funny is when someone's actually being clever with the intention of making me laugh, and so someone's going to get some internet points for that eventually. I don't know when I'm actually going to analyze all this, but silliest comment, most fair-minded comments. Wow, I've had a couple, maybe 2 or 3. Most absurd comments, that's going to be a tough category. So many competitors for that. So here as usual, I remind everyone of the thesis of my call, why I called into the atheist experience, what my idea was that I wanted to have challenged by the atheists, and sadly no one, including Matt Dillahunty himself, no one was able to offer any sort of challenge. Very pathetic. But the PSR is the principle of sufficient reason. You can see that is actually the title that they chose to give to my call. The principle of sufficient reason, which simply states that everything has its being, its existence from itself or from another. Another way of saying it is that there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. Another corollary of this principle is that every effect has a cause. These are self-evident truths. Okay, so nothing controversial, but there are implications for that if you're a naturalist. That's why I said here, principle of sufficient reason plus naturalism, meaning that there's no supernatural free will. It's just everything's natural. If the PSR is true, then you've got hard determinism. That was the reason of my call. You can hear Matt floundering around and squirming and trying to avoid dealing with that, and his co-host brings up quantum mechanics, which is just absurd and ridiculous. And you're going to see a lot of comments here that bring up this quantum stuff as a justification for denying that the PSR plus naturalism equals hard determinism. Doesn't hold water. I also mention here a little statistical analysis. I'm interested in finding out how many women are in the comment section. I've noticed a couple. My hunch is about 2 to 5%. And I am interested in the differences between biological men and biological women. And here, just to be clear, I make a point of stating that I only count biological women as women. No offense intended to anyone who suffers from transgender stuff. But I am interested in the differences between men and women. Why is it that when I go to play chess, it's 90%, 95% men? When I studied physics, it was 85%, maybe between 80 and 90% men. And when I'm at a party and I start talking about philosophy, the women leave, and it's just men who seem to be interested in talking about abstract ideas, metaphysics, philosophy, religion, these sorts of things. Of course, you can have a lot of women interested in religion, but when it comes to discussing ideas in an abstract way, I've noticed that it's mostly men that are into that sort of thing. So it's just an interesting difference. I don't know if it's influenced by cultural factors. Probably is. How much so, God only knows. I'm not trying to dwell on my own comments, but there's another comment here at the top. It's showing up at the top probably because I'm logged in as Catholic Versus. But I said that my call should have been over in a jiffy, because if Matt had been honest, then there really isn't much to talk about. I would have said quite plainly, there are no exceptions to the PSR. So, therefore, if you deny the supernatural, you must be a hard determinist. And he would have responded, yes, that's correct. I am a hard determinist because I deny the supernatural, and the PSR is universally valid. There are no uncaused effects. This is what Matt should have said. And just for fun, I said that he should have ended the call by saying, "Thanks for your call. Take care of yourself, brother." Okay, who's our next caller? In other words, with honesty comes good-natured, pleasant cheerfulness, simplicity, getting on with business, not just squirming and changing the subject and trying to obscure the issue, because there's nothing to obscure here. If there are no exceptions to the PSR, and if you deny the supernatural, then you are a hard determinist. That's just the way it is. No one has come with even an attempt to refute that logic. So because during the interview I talk about the skeptics club that I used to belong to, this guy's taking pot shots at me. He's not a skeptic, he's a Catholic. Ooh. I'm here under false pretenses. Ooh. And he's also spamming the comments on this video. So when I'm the guest on the Atheist Experience. I'm the one in the video. I'm the one who's bringing up the principle of sufficient reason. It's my thesis that's under consideration here. And yet, when I receive an email notification saying that someone has commented on what is essentially my interview, meaning that I'm being interviewed by Matt, or my interaction with Matt, whatever you want to call it, my call into Matt. When I get that email saying that someone has commented, I'm not supposed to respond. When someone says that I'm dishonest, which means behaving or prone to behave in an untrustworthy or fraudulent way, I'm not supposed to respond to that. When it says I'm coming to the comment section under false pretenses, I'm not supposed to respond to that. This moron got 176 likes on his comment. I don't see what's so brilliant about that. I mean, I am a skeptic. It's skepticism that brought me to monotheism, because I rejected all of my faith-based beliefs. That's how I went from atheistic Satanism to monotheism. Obviously, with over 2,000 comments, I don't have time to go through all this sort of drivel, but here I just remind them of my central claim in case you missed it. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation for every natural event in the universe. Do you agree? If so, good. Welcome to classical theism. Do you reject my claim? Well, you're free to do so, but in doing so, you will have rejected reason and science. And of course, a lot of comments here, a lot of drivel. And I do tend to respond to these morons. And I just capped this one off with atheism is silly. You may need to actually think about it, but it is true. If there is no uncaused first cause, then every effect is prior to its own cause. Why do I say that? Because there are only two cases if there's no uncaused first cause. First case is a circular causality, the eternal return of Nietzsche or the Stoics. That's absurd. It's absurd for many reasons, one of them being that it means that the effect is always prior to its own cause. There is no privileged position on a circle. That's why we can say that the effect is before the cause, which is before the effect, which is before the cause, which is before the effect, because it's a circle, it's an infinite loop. The other case, there are only two cases to consider here. The other case, if there's no uncaused first cause, is an infinite chain of cause and effect, linear. And no one's taken the bait. I want someone to argue for this because I've got so many easy ways of refuting whichever path they take. If they want to use the temporal timeline, a temporal chain of cause and effect, this is what we call an accidental chain or an accidentally ordered chain of causality. Both of those are temporal in nature. They're not causality, strictly speaking. They are not immediate causality. They are mediated through time. That's what temporal means. It means mediated through time. The only true causality is what's called essential or per se causality, which is always atemporal. It's always simultaneous. And the example I like to use is when these morons are responding on their device, they're pressing some sort of keyboard of some sort on some sort of device, and as they press, if they were to examine that simultaneous, essentially ordered chain of cause and effect in that moment, without considering your history, the history of the device, the history of science, the history of religion, the history of anything, without examining where these parts came from that are currently involved in this essentially ordered series of causality, if you just examine that, you will see that it is necessarily an essentially ordered series that is immediate causality. There's no mediation. And there is necessarily a finite number of causes in that chain. There may be many, many causes in this essentially ordered chain of cause and effect that are acting simultaneously. But we know it's finite because the effect is manifest. This is the subtle reasoning of Scotus that eludes so many, even Catholic philosophers of Scotus's day, is that we can and must isolate these essentially ordered series of causality. And that because the effect we're examining, choose whichever effect you like. I used the typing of a response on the device of some sort, but you can use pushing a rock with a stick in the bank of a river, whatever it is. That's the classical example that they used in the Middle Ages. Whatever the example is, the effect under consideration is manifest. It's an a priori proof of the existence of the first efficient cause. It's a priori, it's a posteriori, not a priori. It's a posteriori, which carries more weight with the atheist because it's not it just like Anselm's proof, so-called, is controversial because it's a priori. So they accuse us of defining God into existence. Excuse me. They accuse us of defining God into existence, but that's not, they can't say that with an a posteriori proof, especially when it's a strict demonstration according to Aristotle's very severe criteria. So, all of this to say that the infinite chain of cause and effect that is the second case of how it might be possible that there's no uncaused first cause. This infinite chain of cause and effect, right away we can eliminate it from the essentially ordered series, which is causality properly speaking. So that eliminates the infinite chain. But even if we wanted to examine the accidental causes, the accidentally ordered causes, and an accidental cause would be like when I went to the mountain today, I just so happened to see my friend and I hadn't seen him in a while, and we exchanged notes, and the accidental cause of the data that I got from him was the fact that I was going there to play chess. He happened to be there. It was completely accidental, and by happenstance, one thing led to another. We met and I got some information from him and he got some information from me. So that was the accidental cause of that data exchange. And in an accidentally ordered causality, it would be members of the same class of being, meaning the same level of perfection, the same level of being, the same species, if you want to use that word. So one generating another, but not in a way that has any time dependence for the essential ordered series. For example, I'm taking actions right now, but my father, who is of the same species, the same kind, he's a human, he has the same human nature that I have. He is one of the causes of my existence, but that cause is, although it's ordered, I mean, you can't skip a generation. I mean, my grandfather was a cause of my father. My father was a cause of me. We can't skip out any of those people in my timeline, in my heredity, in my ancestry. We can't skip them. They're all part of this chain. One human to another human to another human down the line, father to son, all the way down to me. But in the actions that I take, there's no strictly per se causal role that's played by my father, by my grandfather, by my great-grandfather, etc., and so on. So this is what we call an accidentally ordered chain of cause and effect. Very important, very interesting, but completely irrelevant when we examine the first efficient cause using essentially ordered causality. So I'm not going to dwell on any one thing. I just want to get sort of an overview of these comments so you can get a sense of the flavor, the atmosphere, what sorts of comments I get and what sorts of comments I've had to respond to. Here we have another emphasis on their complete shock and awe that I claim to be skeptical. Well, it's radical doubt that brought me to monotheism, as I said. Without radical doubt, I would not be a Catholic today. It is radical doubt. 100%. Ask any of my close friends who followed my spiritual journey. They will tell you that I was obsessed with philosophy and that I was going through the history of Western philosophy, and that when I hit Descartes, I was deeply entrenched in hard solipsism, and it's Descartes who helped me out of the hard solipsism. And Descartes exposed me also to the solution to solipsism. Indirectly, I mean, in his own way. I mean, he's not a great Catholic. He's I would venture to say that he was a heretic of some sort. Certainly not an Orthodox Catholic, but he had a lot of ideas that helped me out of my solipsism. And radical doubt, although it can bring you to solipsism, and that's essentially the crisis of faith that I had, and the lack of faith that I had is what brought me from atheistic Satanism to hard solipsism, because it doubted everything. But watching how Descartes struggled to find a philosophical justification for taking the leap of faith, it helped me to put the pieces together, to use pure reason. So I had abandoned faith. It was a crisis of faith. But using that doubt to my advantage, knowing that I can have certainty of certain truths, such as the fact that I am, embracing that radical doubt in a conscious way, in a philosophical way, that really helped me to escape from my hard solipsism. So yes, I am a skeptic. I, to this day, consider myself a skeptic. I consider myself to be way more skeptical than your average mediocre atheist. The atheists that I meet in these comments are subscribing to naive realism. They believe that the world exists, and they have zero justification philosophically, much less empirically, for that naive belief. They've never examined their most cherished assumptions about the world and the other. Absolutely silly and childish. Their atheism is barely worthy of the word. I would say they're not worthy of the title atheist. Only a hard determinist, I would say, is worthy of the title atheist. Everyone else should just be called a naive realist. I've talked about this in several of my meta episodes. Here I give a little solution to those who don't believe me when I say the PSR is universal. There are no exceptions to the principle of sufficient reason. I just say do a reduction to absurdity test. Assume that there are exceptions and then follow that assumption to its logical conclusions, which are all absurd. Yes, so this guy calls me a liar here. And I truly am delighted when I'm called a liar or pedophile or whatever it is by the atheist, because it shows that they believe in God and they trust God and they measure everything against the standard that is God. So I respond, the irony is delightful, and it really is. When the atheist accuses me of lying or being unreasonable, because both of those, among countless others, imply the existence of an absolute and objective standard of truth and goodness, which standard everyone calls God. And I firmly believe there's literally nothing the atheist can say without contradicting his puerile worldview. I understand why God laughs when you say there is no God. It is delightful. It is the essence of humor, is to see through, to see beyond the facade, to see beyond the shell game and the magic trick and the deception and all the fancy lights and the smoke screens, the mirrors, the music, the alcohol is flowing. Everything is there to sweep you away into the illusion that you can call yourself a man of science and a rational atheist. Everything is there for you to make you feel comfortable and complacent in your absurd worldview, in your naive realism, where you take for granted the existence of the world, the material world, and the other. Anyway, this goes on and on and on and on and on and on. You can see how it goes on. So finally, I ask him, are you admitting that your judgments are merely subjective, relative, fleeting, mutable, and eminently imperfect? Because he railed against the idea that there was any objective, eternal standard of truth and goodness by which he was able to judge. Well, if that's the case, then I trump all of your merely subjective, relative, fleeting, mutable, and eminently imperfect judgments with my absolute, objective, eternal, and immutable standard of perfect truth and goodness, aka God. You brought a limp noodle to a gunfight, bruv. And, you know, I am goading him, but I sincerely believe this is self-evident truth to me. This is... What other proof do you need that God exists? What other proof do you need? Either you have a standard by which to judge or you don't. And clearly you feel like you do. Clearly you atheists feel all high and mighty, and so you're worshiping my God. So I commend you for that, but I sternly warn you that you're playing with fire by disrespecting the same God that you're bowing to when you bow to those standards that you're so fond of. Blah, blah, blah. So many comments. Maybe I'll just focus on the big guys. Blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll go straight to the punchline at the end and see what this whole thing was all about. There are only a few, really only a few themes. This Ted Grant, I have to give him credit. He's one of the best. He has a sense of humor. He's funny. He's creative. He brings a lot of stuff to talk about. I must admit, I don't read it because I don't have time to read all this crap. But I've scanned his comments and they're funny. They are interesting. You can see in these threads, it's like tag team, right? It's like me versus David versus Goliath. Goliath is this Leviathan with 1,000 heads. So this other guy, Plastic Vision, has taken over. He's got a darker persona, not quite as lovable as that other guy. It goes on and on and on and on and on. How does this thread end? We shall see. There are only a handful. Oh, here my friend Jeremy Bentham showed up. So how do I know this guy? I know him from somewhere. I think I may have interacted with him on my own channel. I get this a lot, special pleading. Special pleading is when you have an unjustified exception to a general rule, but the uncaused first cause is not unjustified. It's justified because the alternatives are circular causality or infinite chain of causality. Those are both absurd, which I can prove. So it's not special pleading. I get this a lot, but it's not special pleading. It's not pleading at all. We can actually start by assuming that I'm wrong and just see where that takes you. Rude and arrogant. I get this a lot. Probably partly true. Here I'm giving out some more internet points. That's pure sarcasm, just showing how silly these idiots are. Here I use my TikTok thing, which is the clock is running out, your time's running out, you better submit. This guy says he's not scared of my threats of eternal damnation. I say you're not scared because you're not alive but dead. Enjoy the rest of your time. And the irony is that the ones who are on their way to hell have a pretty pleasant time of it in this life because God has stopped goading them and giving them graces for conversion, because every grace, every additional grace is just a deeper, darker torment in hell. So there comes a point where it's just enjoy your time. The clock's running out. There's always hope. There's always hope. So just a little reminder, plant that in the brain. TikTok, time's running out. You're going to die soon. Prepare to die. This is one of my go-to goading techniques. In my call to Matt Dillahunty and the Atheist Experience, I did mention how atheists are not comfortable with my thesis of the principle of sufficient reason plus naturalism equals hard determinism. They're not comfortable with it because no one wants to think that their mother's love is just a robotic programming. No one wants to believe that, or that their spouse's love is just a robotic programming. No one wants to believe that. No one's comfortable with that. They're all uncomfortable with hard determinism. I was a hard determinist. I was not comfortable with that. You know, somehow deep down I knew God was real and that free will was real, and it's just absurd. But I get a lot of pushback on this comment that I made during my call, that atheists get nervous. So I guess there was some mention that minds are material, so I just reminded him that that's not the case. Excuse me. The Pope is more of a skeptic than this guy. So again, emphasis on my claim to be a skeptic. I gave a skeptical rebuttal. I doubt it. Just emphasizing that I doubt everything. There's no point looking at a lot of these same old stuff. Here, I say all truths belong to us Catholics. And he says, I know that really. And I'm sure he's being sarcastic, but I just let him win the argument with that. Here we have more emphasis on this nervousness of the atheists when I talk about the supernatural and how free will is necessarily supernatural. When people wonder why I'm emphasizing the PSR, just remind them that that's the title of this video. That's what we're here to discuss. That's what I wanted to discuss during the call, even though I got railroaded into talking about faith. Here's another comment about this, me being a skeptic. Can't believe it. This guy's saying that I'm using post hoc arguments for the existence of the uncaused first cause, but I'm not. I'm starting with the assumption that there is no uncaused first cause, right? Pure reason forces us to conclude that God exists. That's why it's a dogma of the church that we can know with certainty that God exists by the light of natural reason, without recourse to supernatural faith, without recourse to special revelation of any kind. It's because reason forces the thinking person to acknowledge his creator. That's just the way it is. So here I just tell them, assume that you're right and I'm wrong, and follow the logic. It's not hard. Here's another theme that comes up a lot. It's this idea of faith. Oh, the conversation turned to faith. Oh boy. Well, who brought up faith? It wasn't me. I didn't want to talk about faith. I wanted to talk about the PSR. Matt railroaded the conversation. Matt Dillahunty railroaded it to talking about my faith-based beliefs. I don't want to talk about my faith-based beliefs with an atheist. What's the point? You have to learn to crawl before you learn to walk. You need to learn to walk before you learn to run. You need to learn to run before you learn to fly. So there's no point talking about the Bible, talking about my faith-based beliefs with an atheist. It makes no sense. You're not gonna make any progress. Okay, now we come to this quantum mechanics topic, which is brought up. And I rebuff him, saying only a complete moron would claim to love science and then proudly announce in public that quantum mechanics is exempt from the laws of nature. LOL. Hey, I didn't notice this before. I got 5 likes. What is going on? Why? Who's reading this and liking my side of the? Who's on my side? I didn't know anyone was on my side. I thought I was completely alone here. Maybe there are 5 people who infiltrated the Atheist Experience channel. We're actually sympathetic to logic and reason. I ask, if quantum physics violates the principles of causation, then how is it a science? It's a serious question. People think because a guy who sells a lot of books and has his face on the news and it's a physicist, a great physicist, I'm not denying that these people are good at math and modeling. What I'm denying is that their philosophical assumptions of their models are always Catholic. They're not always Catholic. In fact, I don't know too many household name physicists who are Catholic and that understand what science really is, where science really came from. There's so much scientism within the scientific community, it's embarrassing. There's so much bad philosophy that's adopted and spewed, promoted by otherwise intelligent physicists and scientists. It's unbelievable. So, no, the principle of causation is alive and well, despite all of the rumors to the contrary. Look at all the comments. It's unbelievable. So, there's a lot of shifting of the burden of proof. These people think that they're very scientifically minded and that I have the burden of proof to prove the existence of God. And I invite this guy on my show. Not good at naming things because I had a pretty interesting conversation with him. That's another thing I'm disappointed with in the atheist community, at least online, is the unwillingness or the apparent unwillingness to engage in conversation. That's all I want. I say right here, I just want conversation, casual conversation at that. I never do anything but casual. But why are these people reluctant? What are they afraid of? I mean, if you're so rational and so scientifically minded and everything in the culture supports your worldview of atheism, science, trust the science, go with the science, why not have the balls, as Aaron Ra did, to come and talk with me? I mean, he was frustrated, he was annoyed, you know. So I guess that maybe answers my question. These people intuitively know they're just going to be frustrated and annoyed by me because my ways are not their ways, my thoughts are not their thoughts. I see clearly what they don't even see at all. I want to uncover and unpack cases which are so few in number, usually two cases, either X or not X. It's boiled down so clearly and so powerfully that there's literally nowhere to run and nowhere to hide except in agnosticism. Well, we don't know. It's like that in our local universe, our local presentation of the universe, but we don't know. We haven't discovered other universes yet. Maybe the laws of nature are different over there and whatever. That's just weak. It's very weak. And guess what? It's not empirical. It's not scientific to say, well, yeah, you're right for this local presentation of this universe, but there might be other universes and the laws of nature might be different over there. That's not scientific. You don't have any evidence to support your claim. And you claim to like evidence-based beliefs. You don't like faith-based beliefs. But this agnosticism, what I call an inordinate agnosticism, there are things I don't know. There are things the Pope doesn't know. There are things the greatest saints of all time didn't know. There's a healthy agnosticism possible everywhere. But to attempt to hide and to obscure the most axiomatic, fundamental philosophical principles of the natural sciences, to do that with a straight face is to me, is just it's like shoving a spike up your nose into your brain and just stirring because I don't want to hear, I'm not listening, I'm not you can't run away. There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. There is no other universe to run to. Okay, this is the universe. This is it. There's one world. We're in it. Okay, so I know the physicists have models, mathematical models, for all kinds of fantasy worlds where you can escape a difficult metaphysical conversation, a confrontation. A or not A. There's no middle way. So I understand you want to run and hide in these mathematical models that are flawed, not in their coherence, because they're coherent, but they're flawed in their fundamental assumptions. And they don't correspond, and you must admit this if you're an atheist, they don't correspond with reality. Because if you're an atheist, you have to admit that because you are not comfortable with faith. You want evidence-based beliefs only. And there's zero evidence for any other universe. By definition, there will never be any evidence for any other universe, ever. You just have mathematical models, fantasy worlds that you can escape into when you're confronted with the reality that God exists, God is good, and your sin is not good. It's not good. Another guy attacking me with the quantum thing. So I just emphasize quantum mechanics is science, people. I know you want to co-opt it into your absurd and childish faith-based naturalism, but physics remains hard science no matter how much atheist fairy dust you dust it with. Etc., etc., etc. It's painful to me how dim of wit these people are. This David Newman, he's a nice guy. I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's Christian Protestant. I vaguely remember. I did interview him, so I could find out pretty easily who he is, but I just gave him one of my love hearts. When it's not my channel, I don't give everyone a love heart. Although I am praying for these people, for their true and lasting conversion, because that's the Christian way to do it. That's intelligent self-love. Want for them what I want for myself. What is this thread about? 26 things long is attacking the saints and the Bible. And I point out tradition. Okay. Yeah, it's just funny. This guy, Ramakrishna Kamath Suresh, pretty sure that guy should believe in some kind of God. I see you're back with even more nonsense. I don't believe in the irrational. I believe in only those things for which there is hard evidence to support. Really? Is there hard evidence to support your belief that you should only believe things that have hard evidence? Where's the evidence for that? Where's the hard evidence for that? Here he's balking at my suggestion that it's absurd that an atheist should consider one configuration of matter, energy, and space-time more reasonable than another. And it's true. This is devastating to the atheist. What is it about one configuration, for example, your brain with its neurons obeying the laws of nature, compared to another configuration over here, my brain with its neurons that are all confused and mentally ill and, obviously disobeying the laws of nature, right? Atheists have nothing. They have nothing to bring. Nothing. It's ridiculous. Either everything is just shifting configurations, matter, energy, and space-time, or there's a supernatural realm above this natural realm with God, our minds, our souls, our free will, our reason, which is free. That interacts obviously with nature, with our body, with our brain, with our neurons. You think and your neurons light up. It's not the other way around. Here I just emphasize your very manifest belief in nonsense, quote unquote, proves my entire point, because there is no such thing as nonsense according to your naturalist worldview. That's what I've been saying. This is why it's so amusing to discuss philosophy with heretical atheists. And by that, I don't mean atheists are heretical from the Christian perspective, because they are not. They're apostate or heathen. But rather that you are straying from the orthodox tenets of atheism itself. This is embarrassing, but true. The mediocre atheist is an enemy of his own atheism. It's embarrassing. It's hilarious and yet tragic. Blah, 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 blah. It's going to prevent you from humbling yourself and applying radical skepticism, which I believe is the truth. And I let him know because I like him that I'm praying for him. Blah, blah, blah. How long have I been at this now? I don't know how many minutes I've been going on this thing. No one's listening, but this is just for my own amusement anyway. And if I can redirect I'll put a link to this sloppy live stream in the comments and see if I can siphon over some traffic from these people with hopes that eventually I'll be able to interview one or more of them on a live video stream. No one's taken the bait. No one's emailed me. Blah, blah, blah. No one's brought an argument. I don't know if you've noticed here, but he says my argument was terrible. Hard determinism, no morality, no free will, etc. doesn't follow. Yeah, it does. If everything is natural, then it's just a great machine. Well-oiled machine. Doing what it does, and it is literally what it is. That's all you can say as an atheist naturalist. If you believe in the PSR. Now, if you don't believe in the PSR, then you're saying there are uncaused effects in the natural world. Good luck with that. And you claim to be a lover of science. So there aren't too many themes here. Here I'm walking him through the essentially ordered series of causality that is manifest when he types his response on his device of choice. And what does he say? Your last premise fails. Cause and effect, as you are describing it, only exists on the macro level within the universe, not the universe itself. Oh boy. So here we have an interesting reverse composition fallacy or something like that, where he says, well, yeah, everything's well ordered on the macro level, but if you zoom in, it's random, meaning uncaused, or it's indeterminate. This is the BS that floats around the new science, the new physics. And of course, I encountered it when I studied physics at the University of Waterloo. And we encounter it. We're exposed to all kinds of interpretations of the observations of quantum physics and the other new physics. But it's presented as an interpretation. It's on top of the observation, we're trying to interpret the observations. So that gives rise to different schools. The most famous, of course, is the Copenhagen school, the Copenhagen interpretation. Everyone's familiar with this stuff. But people have a hard time making that all-important distinction between hard science and sloppy philosophical interpretations of hard science. Here, not to brag, but I do have a paper that I co-authored. It's in a peer-reviewed, reputable peer-reviewed quantum engineering journal. And my name is the second name listed after my supervisor, Michel Dion. I mentioned that I only ever studied science because I'm interested in how the natural world works, and that not because I care about natural science per se, but because I'm interested in first things, philosophy. That's why I studied. I really should have studied philosophy, but I studied physics, naively thinking that I would be exposed to a genuine quest for a holistic understanding of the nature of things, because that's what physics means. It means nature, the study of nature, physis in Greek. So I just put a ribbon on top by saying the laws of nature, the laws of physics, because as I said, physics means nature. The laws of nature are never, ever violated, period. Period. God suspends them with his miracles the same way the programmer that's hacking his own video game that he made, he's introducing exceptions and giving himself all sorts of powers that the players don't necessarily always get to enjoy. None of that violates the computer code, the principles of computing, none of it. It's a higher level though. The programmer is at a higher level. It's a very imperfect analogy, as all analogies are, but it's nonetheless an interesting analogy, the computer programmer versus the end user. creator versus creature. Blah, 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 blah. So let me just see, how long have I been recording this for? 55 minutes. So I guess I'll wrap things up here. I could go on and on and on and on because there are over 2,000 comments. But there really aren't that many themes. They don't like my laughing during the call. They don't like the fact that I say that the supernatural makes them nervous. They don't like the fact that I say that I understand quantum physics. They don't think I'm skeptical. There were a couple who were honest and said, you're absolutely right, and that's why I'm a hard determinist. There were a couple people like that. And I just gave them my love and respect and said, keep seeking the truth, because when I was a hard determinist, it was not easy. But I kept seeking the truth, and it got darker. To be honest with you, it did get darker and darker. It didn't get better until I reached rock bottom, which is the atheistic Satanism and then the hard solipsism. It's a dark and lonely place to be. But if you want to discover the truth, you can't just sit there and be complacent. You can't just say, well, we know the real world exists because if I reach out and touch it, it feels real. Well, you're assuming the very thing that I'm asking you to call into question, which is the alleged sense perceptions themselves. You're assuming the truth of the thing that I'm asking you to doubt. So that really can't get you to the end game. You're just going to remain halfway up the stony mountain. You're going to remain mediocre as an atheist. And that's not what I want for you. What I want for you is to be a true bona fide atheist. It's hard. It's difficult. You're going to have to go through hard determinism. You're going to probably have a crisis of faith and end up at hard solipsism, like I did. But with all that angst, existential angst, provided it's authentic and sincere, your quest for truth, provided that you really want to follow the truth no matter where it leads. If you're an atheist that loves the truth, you're going to have to suffer. You're going to have to suffer through it. Now, there are many other ways that you can come to conversion. You can just sit there and be complacent and smug and think that you trust the science and that everything's empirical, and that if something isn't proven with empirical evidence, then you're not going to believe it. You can tell yourself that till you're green in the face, and you're going to sit there stuffing your face with food and with television or whatever it is that you do in your complacent, mediocre atheist lifestyle. And in that sad, pathetic state, chained to the cave, the wall of the cave, watching the shadows and being entertained, eating your popcorn and your junk food in Plato's cave, staring at the shadows as they dance on the wall in front of you. It is true that you could just sit there like a slob, enjoying yourself, and then have the grace from God to convert by a million different means. The beauty of the world, a relationship, a tragedy, death in the family, whatever it is, your own confrontation with your mortality. There are a million ways God reaches out to people. But if you want to be proactive, if you're an atheist and you want to be proactive and you want to seek the truth, you're going to have to abandon your cherished assumptions. And they are, I can guarantee you, they are unexamined. You're not aware of what your assumptions are. So what you're going to have to do is you're just going to have to systematically doubt everything that can be doubted. And there's only one truth you cannot deny, and that is, I am. So get busy, get proactive. Don't be complacent. If you're an atheist, don't be complacent. Don't be mediocre. Because it's a dangerous game you're playing. The clock is ticking. Time is running out. You have to prepare yourself to die. You will die soon. I don't say sooner or later, because even later, even if it's 100 years hence, that is soon. 100 years is nothing. You can waste time. You could quickly waste an entire century with the distractions that we have all around us in this modern world, this fallen world. It's so easy to get caught up in the world, and before you know it, you're too old, tired, and sick to think straight, to get your affairs in order spiritually. You're probably, if you're not seeking the truth now as a young 20-something guy, that's who most of the comments are, I'm assuming, on the Atheist Experience video. If you're a young, healthy guy who's an atheist, self-proclaimed atheist, or agnostic, same thing. If you're not willing to push yourself and to suffer now, when you're young and healthy, and everything is going your way, the doors are opening, opportunity, life's good. If you're not willing to suffer for the truth now, in your quest for the truth now, then do you really think that you're going to be willing, or even able, more importantly, are you going to be able to strive for the truth in a sincere way that requires energy, it requires focus, it requires determination, tenacity, patience, perseverance, long suffering. It's not easy. If you're young and you're an atheist, put in the work now. You'll thank me later. You'll thank me later. Seek the truth and you will find it. But if you don't seek it, if you're just calling theists liars and deranged and deluded idiots online, it may be entertaining, but it's not advancing your cause. It's not bringing you closer to discovery of the ultimate truth. So I encourage you to strive for the truth. And I want to say one thing about the insults that I sling at atheists on this video, because I made a conscious decision a while ago to, when the opportunity presents itself, to insult these people as a way of provoking them so that they would have either a moral outrage, which is usually the case, the how dare you, and this obviously brings to mind the eternal and objective, unchanging standard of truth, perfect truth, by which they judge, aka God. So it's to provoke that. It's also to stir up their pride, which is what's preventing them from seeing the truth, because their problem is intellectual. Yes, it is intellectual. They have a grave problem intellectually, seeing the truth. They're blinded intellectually, but that problem stems primarily not from their diet or exercise or from their genetics. It stems from ill will. It's a volitional problem primarily that spills over and colors the intellect and disables the intellect. So I want to insult them because it truly is foolish to deny the existence of God. It says that, God himself says that in the Bible in several places. But it's not so much that I want to point out the obvious, that you're a fool if you deny God. It's that I want to stir up your pride, because that's at the heart of your volitional problem. You need to be humble. And if you start defending your own intelligence over against my intelligence, then you're well on your way to discovering that atheism is false and that there is actually a supernatural realm which enables you to make the choices that you make freely in the reasoning that you engage in. Because reasoning that's not free is not reasoning. And there is absolutely no possibility of meriting either praise or blame for any of your reasoning if you deny free will. And as I emphasize time and time again in those comments, there can be no free will if the PSR is universal and if naturalism is true, there can be no free will, just hard determinism. So I want to stir up their pride with the insults, and it's usually the same insult, and any insult that I use on the atheists, I'm in the same boat. So I usually say they're dim of wit and weak of will, because these are the two areas that we need to work on, all of us, especially the religious. We need to work on getting back the intellectual clarity and the strength of will that we lost when our first parents fell from grace about 7,000-8,000 years ago, or whatever it was. That's my firm belief. That did come up in the comments too, but no one really made a big deal about it. A couple people talked about the Bible and how horrible the Old Testament God is, and I just said don't worship any God that you're superior to in any way. But again, this idea that you can be superior to another person in any way, intellectually, volitionally, or whatever, is impossible for the atheist, because one configuration of matter energy cannot be superior to another according to their own worldview, if they're self-consistent. So we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for stopping by. I see here we have a couple of comments in the live chat. Nicola, nice to see you. Love you, my brother. God bless you. Same to you, right back at you. And thanks for the comments. I see, I don't know, I'm going to mess up the pronunciation. Atrocitas interfector. Whatever can be destroyed by the truth should be destroyed by the truth. I feel some Nietzsche vibes coming through here. Good stuff. I like to say, you know, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, weaker, neither, or some combination of both. That's my twist on Nietzsche. That's my favorite paraphrase of Nietzsche, because it's, if anything's obvious, it's that whatever doesn't kill you doesn't necessarily always make you stronger. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me, and God bless. Take care of yourself.